Hey everyone, we're going to be talking about Alphabet stock, and I feel why it's well placed to continue to do well. As you can see, it's done well already over the past around 1 year. If I kind of look at 1 year performance, it's up 70%, but I still feel there is enough juice left. So this is not a buy or sell recommendation, but my analysis of what the company is doing. So just to give you a quick overview, what the company is, it's a tech company that has a host of services. The major revenue generators are their Google services, which is their advertising platforms on Google Search as well as on YouTube, and their subscriptions that they're selling via Google One and Gemini program. Then there is Google Cloud, which is a B2B business, and they kind of offer cloud services and cloud computing to other companies. And then being other bets like Waymo and other ones that they kind of keep testing on. They get 50% revenue from US, around 30% from Europe, and remaining from APAC approximately. So it has an interesting model in terms of its B2B via the cloud services and the advertising platform. And it's also B2C in terms of the search interface as well as the subscriptions that they are able to sell to the general public. Now, what interesting thing has happened on Google in particular is basically I feel they have been able to kind of stop the impact of ChatGPT. So if you see, actually, ChatGPT was actually had started to take away market share from Google searches because people were kind of using it for their daily searches. But I think Google has been kind of been able to make a comeback with Gemini. And what has then happened is ChatGPT is kind of getting screwed from almost all areas. So they are also kind of now going to have to start running ads on their chatbot interface, which actually is quite hilarious or very, very interesting if you look at it. So since they've been able to stop ChatGPT, they don't need actually ads inside of the Gemini interface as long as their other properties continue to do well, right? And I also have their quarter three earnings presentation. They were increasing EPS at about 35%, net income at around 33%. And as I told you, the revenues are split accordingly. Google search, YouTube ads growing 15% each, Google network flattish down 3%, and the subscriptions they've been able to sell at plus 21%. Now I feel this is structurally changing since if you see the actual overall growth in revenue is around about 16% for the year on year performance in the quarter. However, their subscriptions have been growing at 21%, which indicates that the mix of revenue is kind of starting to tilt towards subscription and platform devices revenue. And I feel that is interesting because it's more long term in nature. It's less dependent on advertising revenue and that being cyclical in terms of when the corporates decide to spend. So in that terms, I feel it's a good shift, and I feel it also will help them drive higher margins, as Apple has also been able to focus on services revenue as the time has gone on. And I feel, if just a second, I can tell you, yeah, Google Cloud also has been growing phenomenally well. It's grown 34%, and it's now on track to be having operating margins of 24%, which I feel kind of go up a little bit more given where AWS kind of ends up. But that being said, it's interesting they've been able to grow their cloud revenues, they've been able to grow their subscription revenues, which I feel is actually the main driver of stock performance because this ultimately lead to around a 35% or a 33% increase in profit after taxes. That being said, let me also quickly take you towards the tech analysis. And this is also more from a long-term investing standpoint. So if you can see, I have the weekly charts opened up with volumes as well as 30 weekly EMA and VStop, which are kind of the main indicators that I use to see the current trend, long-term trend, honestly. And if you know a little bit of stage analysis, we're actually out of stage one and like solid and strongly into stage two with decent enough volume uptick, and we stop being green all the way. And even though the stock has run up, this is not an insane, I would say, run up in terms of the stock price being like 40-50% away from the 30 weekly EMA, which is a good sign. That means the growth has been healthy, has been sustainable, and that's what has kind of reflected in the last 1 year's performance. That being said, there are a few caveats that I would like to kind of point out, which are the risks, which are definitely the main things one you should be careful of. One is this kind of like a regulatory overhang in terms of there are quite a few cases going on. So I've also kind of used Google Notebook LM, which is again their own tool, which I feel they've done a phenomenal job at. Uh, and if I just take you to one query I was just running, which are the major antitrust challenges that are going on. So one is definitely the search and search advertising revenue. Uh, it's still underway, it's still being discussed, but it's a huge overhang. If anything kind of turns against them, their growth in revenues will be really controlled and it will really have a lot of long-term implications for the company. Because if you see, they've been more or less about growing their advertising revenues. And that's why I also feel this shift that I was discussing earlier from growing their subscription revenues is kind of critical. Both this subscriptions revenue as well as Google Cloud revenues. If these two things continue to kind of grow at the clip of 25-30% plus, I think we are still in a good position for where the company is headed. Finally, I would also want to talk a small note on valuations. I'd also asked Gemini to kind of do like a bull base bear scenario in terms of where are we likely to end in FY26. Kind of the base case being around 12% upside, bull being a 25% upside. And I feel even at this moment, Google is kind of fairly priced. If you see, we are at a ratio of around 32 to 33. And as we discussed, quarter three growth was in the range of 33% as well. So we're perfectly in a peg ratio of 1. I feel that's a decently fair value for a very large cap company. I would say like a mega cap company like Google slash Alphabet. If they're able to deliver around like a 30% profit growth in like quarter four, I would actually be really interested. And I feel that will kind of trigger in or usher in like the next growth uptick in stock price for the company. Again, none of this is any financial advice. I'm on the brink of about to make a purchase. Probably gonna be doing that soon. Like I have my homework done and things look fine as long as there are no antitrust or regulatory challenges. Let me know what you think of the stock and be sure to follow and subscribe for more.